"Oh, sorry. I accidentally left your $5,600 MacBook Pro in the hotel fountain," my brother said after I refused to put his name on our parents' beach house. Dad added, "Mistakes happen." I did not yell. That night, I updated the device protection claim and restricted his access to the family travel card. But at 7:42 a.m., he woke up to a notice slipped under his hotel door. The screen was still glowing when it hit the water, a pale blue rectangle sinking through the shallow end of the lobby fountain, catching the overhead chandelier light on its way down, settling against the copper pennies and smooth stones at the bottom. A $5,600 MacBook Pro, 16-inch, the one I bought with my first full-year bonus at Coastal Heritage Title Company. Resting face up in 4 inches of recirculated hotel water while the screensaver bled and flickered and went dark. My brother Barrett stood next to the water with both hands in his pockets. He was smiling, not the tight expression of someone who had just made a mistake. The open, relaxed face of someone who had done exactly what he intended and was waiting for the reaction. "Oh, sorry," he said. "I accidentally left your MacBook Pro in the hotel fountain." He said it to me, but he was looking at our father, making sure Neil heard the word accidentally, the way you place a word into a sentence to construct a version of events you might need later. Neil was standing by the elevator bank with his jacket folded over one arm. He had watched the whole thing from 10 feet away. He looked at the water. He looked at Barrett. He looked at me. "Mistakes happen," he said. 2 women at the concierge desk stopped mid-conversation and looked at the water. A bellhop loading a luggage cart onto the elevator held the door open a beat too long. The lobby of the Palmetto Grand Resort was not loud, but it was full enough for a dozen people to see what had just happened and decide, one by one, to look somewhere else. If you are new here, welcome to Karma Unfolded. The MacBook was not the story. The MacBook was the last thing I was willing to lose before I stopped being patient. I did not yell. I did not step toward Barrett. I did not reach into the water or kneel on the marble floor or raise my voice in a hotel lobby at 9 o'clock on a Thursday evening with families moving through the revolving door behind us. I looked at the water. I looked at the screensaver dying. I turned around, walked to the elevator, and pressed the button for the 4th floor. The doors closed, and I rode up alone. 20 minutes earlier, we had been at dinner, the hotel restaurant. Linen napkins. A bottle of wine Barrett ordered without checking the price. The 5 of us around a round table by the window, Barrett, Neil, my Aunt Della, my boyfriend Miles, and me. We were on the 2nd night of a 4-night family trip that I was paying for on the family travel card. Barrett had not offered to split the cost. Neil had not asked. Barrett waited until the entrees arrived. He cut into his steak, took a sip of wine, and said without looking up, "We should talk about the house." I set my fork down. "The answer is the same, Barrett. It has been 3 years, Teagan, 3 years since Mom died, and you have been sitting on that property like it is a museum. You will not rent it, you will not renovate it, you will not add my name so we can at least make decisions together. The trust names me as sole trustee and sole beneficiary. That is Mom's decision. I am honoring it. Mom's decision." Barrett repeated the words the way you repeat something you want a jury to hear twice. Mom was on painkillers when she signed that paperwork. She was scared. She was not thinking clearly. Della set her fork down with a sound that stopped the sentence. She was thinking clearly enough to hire an attorney. "Barrett, nobody asked you, Della. Catherine asked me. Which is why I was in the room when the trust was signed. And you were not." The table went quiet. A server approached with a water pitcher, read the silence, and turned back. Miles picked up his glass and took a long drink, watching Barrett the way you watch weather change. Barrett redirected to Neil. "Dad, tell her. This is not what Mom wanted. She wanted us to share everything." Neil set his knife and fork parallel on the plate. He looked at me. Then he gave the nod. the small, forward tilt of the chin that I have watched my entire life, the nod that says, I am giving my older child permission to do what he was going to do anyway, and I will stand behind it when it is over. Barrett set down his wine glass. The table was quiet. Della's hand moved to her water glass, but did not lift it. Mom gave you that house because she felt sorry for you, Teagan. Barrett's voice did not rise. It flattened into something smooth and deliberate. You were the one who never left, never built anything worth coming home to. You pushed paper at a title company while I closed deals across the country. That house is your consolation prize for being the daughter who had nowhere else to go. A couple at the next table glanced over. The woman looked at Barrett, then at me, then at her plate. Della's fingers whitened around her water glass. Miles put his fork down and looked at Barrett with the expression of an architect looking at a structure that has just been built without a foundation. Barrett was not finished. He leaned forward across the table. You want to know the truth? Mom knew you would never leave Beaufort. She knew you would never build a career that took you anywhere. She left you the house because she knew it was the only thing you would ever have. It was not a gift. It was a life raft. Neil picked up his wine glass and drank without meeting anyone's eye. He did not correct Barrett. He did not say Catherine's name. He sat in the chair of a man who had already chosen a side and was watching the consequences play out from the safest distance the table allowed. Della spoke before I could. Her voice was low and level and carried exactly as far as the table edge. Barrett, your mother signed that trust while you were 1,400 miles away selling pills. She signed it in a room where the only other person present was the daughter who drove her to every appointment for 7 months. You do not get to rewrite what happened in that room. I was at the hospital when she added the clause. She dictated it to me. I know exactly what she wanted because she told me while you were booking a flight home for the morning after the service. The silence that followed was the kind that makes waiters change direction. I did not respond to the consolation prize line or the life raft line, not because I did not have an answer, because I had something better than an answer waiting in a lawyer's office and I was not ready to use it yet. I picked up my napkin, folded it beside my plate, and said, "Excuse me, I need to get something from the room." What I needed was the MacBook. I was going to show Barrett the trust clause, the provision Catherine added 6 days before she died. I was going to end the argument the way I end every title dispute at work, with documentation. I never made it to the elevator. Barrett followed me into the lobby, reached into my laptop bag, pulled out the MacBook, walked to the fountain, and let go. Miles was reading in the suite when I came through the door. He looked up from his book and measured my face the way he reads building plans. "What happened?" he asked. Barrett put my laptop in the fountain. "On purpose?" He called it an accident. Dad backed him up. Miles closed the book and set it on the nightstand. "What do you need?" 20 minutes, my phone, and quiet. In those 20 minutes, I did 3 things. First, I filed the device protection claim through AppleCare. Serial number, date of purchase, nature of damage. Water submersion, lobby of the Palmetto Grand Resort, Charleston, South Carolina. The claim number came back in 90 seconds. Second, I opened the Capital One app, navigated to the family travel card where I am the primary cardholder, and removed Barrett Ashford as an authorized user. The system asked me to confirm. I confirmed. His access ended at 9:47 p.m. Eastern. Third, I called Mara Fielding. She is the attorney I retained 6 weeks before this trip. She picked up on the second ring. "It is Teagan," I said. "Tell me. Send the package. Room 412. Before 8 if possible. I can have it there by 7:30. "Thank you, Mara." I hung up. Miles brought me a glass of water and sat on the opposite bed. He did not ask what Fielding was sending. He already knew. He had known since June, when I came home from work one evening and sat at the kitchen table for 40 minutes without speaking. Then I told him everything. Here is what I told him. Here's what I had known for 6 weeks before the MacBook went into the water, and here's why I did not yell. Because when you already have the full picture, there is nothing left to scream about. My mother Catherine bought the beach house at 14 Osprey Lane in Beaufort, South Carolina in 2006. It was her parents' house before that. She purchased it outright using inheritance money from her own mother. No mortgage, no joint ownership. That house was a Reeves family property that Catherine brought into the Ashford marriage. Neil understood the distinction. Barrett never accepted it. When Catherine was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer in the fall of 2022, she moved fast on the paperwork. She had spent 3 decades married to a man who believed every family asset should be jointly held and appraised at sale value. She was not going to let the beach house become a liquidation after she was gone. In January 2023, in the waiting room of Dr. Pham's oncology practice, she signed a revocable trust, naming me as sole trustee and sole beneficiary. Barrett was in Denver closing a pharmaceutical deal. Neil was home grading final exams. I sat next to her in a blue plastic chair between a magazine rack and a water cooler that hummed every 40 seconds. The receptionist called a name that was not ours. Someone coughed in the hallway. My mother opened the folder Della had prepared, uncapped a pen from her purse, and signed every page. Her handwriting was already changing from the medication, the letters rounder and lighter. The pen moving slower across the signature lines than it had on the kitchen calendar where she used to write dentist 3 p.m. and pick up Barrett from soccer in the same quick hand. But she signed. On the inside cover of the trust folder, she wrote a note in blue ink. 7 sentences. It started with my name and ended with a request to take care of the house the way it had taken care of us. That note is the only piece of my mother's handwriting I have that was written directly to me. Not a birthday card, not a grocery list. A private message from a woman who knew she was running out of time and chose to spend part of what was left writing to her daughter in a waiting room while the oncologist ran 20 minutes late. 6 days later, from her hospital bed, Catherine added a clause to the trust with Della's help. If any party attempts to alter the deed or add a beneficiary without written, notarized trustee consent, the trust automatically triggers a title lock through the county recorder. Catherine was a school librarian. But she knew her family. She built the wall before the siege. She died in April. The trust became irrevocable. I became trustee. The week after the funeral, Della drove 2 hours to my apartment with the original trust folder. She set it on my kitchen table, opened it to the inside cover, and said, "Your mother wanted you to find this when you were ready, not when Barrett was watching." Della is Catherine's younger sister and a retired paralegal. She helped draft the title lock clause in the hospital room while my mother dictated, and Barrett was booking his return flight for the morning after the service. Barrett started asking about the deed 4 months after the funeral. At first it was soft. "Have you thought about adding my name?" Just for fairness. Then it became annual, then seasonal. Then it became a standing agenda item at every family gathering. Last Thanksgiving, he brought it up between the turkey and the pie. We were at Neil's house. Della was washing dishes. Barrett leaned across the table while I was clearing plates and said, "You know you cannot hold that house forever, Teagan. One person on a deed is a liability. What if something happens to you? What if you get sick? The property goes into probate and the state takes a cut. Is that what Mom would have wanted?" He had rehearsed it. The concern in his voice was polished to a sheen, the same tone he uses on reluctant physicians when he is pitching a new product line. I set the plates down and said, "The property is in a trust, Barrett. It does not go through probate. That is the entire point of a trust." He looked at Neil. Neil looked at his coffee. Barrett said, "We will talk about this another time." They did. They talked about it without me. They talked about it in January when Neil co-signed the loan application. They talked about it in May when Barrett filed the forged deed. They had been talking about it for 3 years. And the only person not included in the conversation was the person whose name was on the documents. My answer was always no. The beneficiary was named. The deed stays. Stay with me on Karma Unfolded. What Barrett was doing behind the asking is the part I did not know until 6 weeks before the vacation, when it arrived at my desk at work like a case file on someone else's property. In May 2026, I sat down with 18 months of statements for the family travel card. I am the primary card holder. I added Barrett 3 years ago so he could book flights for family visits. That was the agreement. Family travel only. What I found was $73,000 in charges that had nothing to do with family. I know what unauthorized spending looks like because I process lien disputes at Coastal Heritage where the numbers are smaller and the excuses are thinner. The charges were scattered across 18 months in a pattern designed to stay below any single statement threshold. A monthly car payment of $687 recurring for 14 months. A $4,200 watch from a jeweler in Scottsdale purchased 4 days after Christmas, which means he bought himself a gift on my credit while I was driving to the beach house alone to check on the pipes. 3 months of country club dues at $1,150 each, 2 ski trips to Telluride. Restaurants in Phoenix, Atlanta, and Chicago on dates that aligned with Barrett's pharmaceutical sales route, but not with any family event. A furniture delivery to a Denver apartment. An annual gym membership renewal. I flagged each charge with the yellow highlighter I use on lien discrepancies. By the time I finished, the printout was more yellow than white. I stacked the 18 months of statements, squared the edges against my desk, and began the spreadsheet. Item, date, amount, category, running total. I finished at 4:47 p.m. and the total was $73,116. I saved the file, closed the laptop, and sat in my office chair for a full minute looking at the ceiling tiles. Then I opened the laptop and processed 2 property closings before 5 o'clock. My hands were steady. They are always steady at work. Documents do not care about your feelings. They require precision. I almost printed those statements and mailed them to Barrett that afternoon with a note that said, "Call me." The spreadsheet was open. The printer was warm. But the forged T on a document I had not yet seen was already waiting for me in a title alert queue 3 screens away. And if I confronted Barrett about the card before I found the rest, he would have time to cover whatever else was underneath. So I closed the spreadsheet, saved it to the cloud, and went back to my regular caseload. I processed 2 closings that afternoon. My hands were steady. They are always steady. That is what this job teaches you. Documents do not care about your feelings. They require accuracy. The title alert landed in my queue 4 days later. We receive dozens daily at Coastal Heritage, automated flags from the county recorder when a new instrument is filed against a property in our coverage area. I review them as part of my job. I click, verify, close, 40 seconds per alert on a normal day. This one was a quitclaim deed, filed electronically through an online legal document service called FastDeed. The property, 14 Osprey Lane, Beaufort, the proposed amendment, add Barrett Ashford as co-owner to a property held in an irrevocable family trust. The trustee's signature on the authorization line read, Teagan Ashford. My hand stopped on the mouse. My coffee was still warm. The overhead fluorescent was humming. My coworker Janine was on the phone 2 desks over, explaining to a buyer that a lien release takes 7 to 10 business days. Everything around me was continuing. The signature was not mine. My capital T has a short crossbar that sits high on the vertical stroke. It has looked that way since I was 18 and signing my first apartment lease. The T on that document had a long crossbar that dipped to the left, close enough for an automated system that checks for a name match but not a stroke pattern. Not close enough for a woman who signs documents for a living and knows the difference between a signature and an imitation. The county recorder had already flagged the filing because the underlying trust requires notarized consent for any deed modification. The quitclaim had no notarization, No consent letter, no trust amendment. It was procedurally dead. But it had been prepared. Someone had opened a browser, navigated to Fastdeed, entered my name and address, uploaded something that approximated my signature, paid a $79 filing fee with a credit card, and submitted a legal instrument to alter the ownership of my dead mother's property. I saved the alert, closed the screen, opened a title search on the same property. That search is what changed everything. Barrett had applied for a $210,000 personal loan through Pinnacle National Bank in January 2026, 4 months before the quitclaim attempt. On the application, under secondary residence, he listed 14 Osprey Lane, Beaufort, South Carolina. Under estimated property value, he wrote $485,000. Under ownership interest, he checked the box labeled co-owner. He did not co-own the property. He had no ownership interest. He had never held title, never been named as a beneficiary, never contributed $1 to the mortgage that did not exist because Catherine bought the house outright. He had no legal right to enter the address on any financial document. But he had, and the loan had been approved, and the funds had been dispersed. And the reason I knew is that the quitclaim attempt had triggered a lien search that pulled the Pinnacle file out of the county's database like a thread that unravels a sleeve. I printed the loan application. I read every line. I stopped at the cosigner section and read it twice. Then I set the paper on my desk and sat very still. The cosigner was Neil Ashford, my father's signature, his address, his social security number. The same man who taught app history at Crestfield High for 28 years and graded papers with a red pen at the kitchen table every Sunday afternoon had signed his name to a $210,000 loan application that listed his dead wife's beach house as collateral for his son's debt. A house held in a trust he was never named in. A trust Catherine created specifically because she did not want the house treated as a family financial instrument. I drove home that evening through rush hour traffic and sat at the kitchen table in the apartment I share with Miles. He was working late at the firm. The apartment was quiet except for the refrigerator cycling and a car alarm 2 streets over that no one was answering. The loan application was in my bag. I had not eaten since noon. I almost picked up the phone and called Neil right then. His signature was on that application. The man who read bedtime stories to Barrett and me in the same voice, who drove us to school in the same car, who sat in the same pew at the same church for 30 years, had signed a document that used his dead wife's property to secure his son's debt. I wanted to hear him explain it. I wanted him to tell me there was a reason I had not considered. But my mother's handwriting was on my phone screen, the scanned image of her note, and the memory of her sitting in Dr. Pham's waiting room held me at the table. She had not called anyone. She had signed the documents, added the clause, and let the paperwork outlast the argument. She was a librarian. She understood that systems hold longer than confrontations. I would do what she did. I would prepare the wall and wait for them to walk into it. I opened my phone and looked at the note one more time. Blue ink. My name at the top. The handwriting that had been getting lighter for months before it stopped. I called Mara Fielding the next morning. She came to the Coastal Heritage office during lunch. I closed the conference room door and spread the evidence across the table, the way I spread closing documents, chronologically, left to right, every page labeled. Fielding read everything without interruption. When she finished, she set the loan application down and said, "Your brother committed forgery on a property instrument. Your father committed fraud by co-signing a loan with unauthorized collateral. These are not civil disputes, Teagan. These are crimes. I know what they are. What do you want to do? Prepare everything. FTC referral for the card charges. County DAW for the forged deed. Bank notification that the loan collateral was never authorized. Cease and desist to both of them. And then hold it." She looked at me over her glasses. "Hold it for what? I am going on a family vacation with them in 3 weeks." I want to give Barrett one more chance to stop asking on his own, and if he does not stop, then I call you and you send everything to his hotel room." The package was ready by June 20. Fielding held it. I went on the vacation. I paid for the hotel on the card I was about to close. I sat at dinner and listened to Barrett make his case one more time and watched Neil nod his permission. I heard Barrett call the beach house my consolation prize for being the daughter who never left, and then he put my laptop in the water. At 7:42 the next morning, Fielding's courier slipped a 3-page notice under the door of room 4 Whelm. I know the exact time because the hotel's internal delivery log recorded it. Barrett told me the rest. He was in the shower when the envelope came through the gap. He saw it when he stepped onto the bath mat. White envelope, legal size, no return address, just his name printed on the front. He opened it standing in a towel with water still running down his neck. He read the first page, then the second, then the third, then he read all 3 again. Then he got dressed faster than he had gotten dressed for any sales call in his career and walked down the hall to the 4th floor. He was pounding on my suite door 18 minutes later, 8 o'clock sharp. The paper was trembling against his fingers when Miles opened the door. Barrett walked past Miles without looking at him, the way you walk past a piece of furniture on the way to a fire. "What is this?" He held up the notice. "Sit down and I will tell you," I said. I was at the desk, no laptop, phone on the table, coffee untouched. "I am not sitting down. You filed a fraud report over a credit card. Over $73,000 in unauthorized charges on my credit account across 18 months. Your car payment, your club dues, your watch, your ski trips, all documented, all charged to my name." Barrett lowered the pages to his side. His chest moved with a breath he had to work for. "That was supposed to be temporary," he said. "I was going to pay it back." Page 2. He looked at the second page, the section about the quitclaim deed. "That was a formality," he said, quieter now. "I filed it online. I did not think it would go through. It went through to the county recorder's office. They flagged it because the trust requires notarized consent, which you did not have, because I never gave it. The flag generated a title alert. That alert landed in my work queue, at my title company, on my desk. The paper I push is the reason your forged deed was caught before it cleared. The paper I push flagged your loan application. The paper I push is why you are standing in my hotel room at 8 in the morning with nothing left to negotiate." Barrett's face passed through 3 colors in 5 seconds. Red to white to a gray I have only seen once before. On a seller at a closing who realized the inspection report had been altered and his deal was collapsing. He looked at Neil, who had followed him into the suite and was standing just inside the door with his arms at his sides. "Dad, say something," Barrett said. Neil had read page 3, the page about the loan. He knew what was coming. "You co-signed Barrett's loan application," I said, turning to my father. "A $210,000 loan through Pinnacle National. He listed the beach house as collateral, a property held in Mom's trust that you have no authority over and no ownership interest in. You signed your name next to his, knowing the collateral was not his to pledge." Neil's arms uncrossed slowly. He put one hand on the doorframe. His weight shifted onto it. "I was trying to help your brother get stable," he said. "By pledging a house Mom specifically designed a trust to protect. She would have wanted Barrett to have stability. She wanted Barrett to have stability so much that she wrote him out of the deed, added a title lock clause from her hospital bed, and asked Della to help her draft it. She knew exactly what Barrett would do. She knew what you would help him do. She built the wall before either of you started digging." Neil's hand tightened on the doorframe. His jaw moved once, as if forming a word, and stopped. He looked at the carpet. "How far was it supposed to go, Dad? Until the loan defaulted and Pinnacle filed a lien against the property? Until Barrett's deed cleared and you had enough names on the title to outvote me and force a sale? How far?" He did not answer. his shoulder pressed into the frame like a man leaning on the only solid thing in a room that was listing. I stood up from the desk. You charged $73,000 to my credit without my knowledge. That is fraud. You filed a deed with my signature forged on it. That is forgery. You listed a trust-held property as loan collateral without authorization. That is mortgage fraud. Dad, you co-signed that application knowing you had no authority. My attorney has filed with the county DA. The bank has been notified. The recorder has activated the title lock Mom built into the trust before she died. I am not asking for an explanation. I am telling you what is already in motion. Barrett tried 3 things, each one smaller than the last. The card charges were a misunderstanding, he said. I will transfer the full balance by end of month. Just call Capital One and reverse the report. Which account will you transfer from? Your Pinnacle loan just got flagged. Your bank accounts are under review. Where is the money coming from, Barrett? He did not answer. His jaw worked once, finding nothing. We can handle this privately, he said, switching direction. No lawyers, no county. We sit down, just the 3 of us, and we figure out a plan. Private arrangements between family members is how we got a forged deed and a fraudulent loan application. I process closings for a living, Barrett. I have seen what happens when families handle things privately. Someone loses the house. He shifted again. His shoulders dropped. His voice changed register from argument to appeal. The way it does when he is on the phone with a doctor's office trying to reschedule a missed appointment. The performance of a man recalibrating in real time. I will pay back the card. Every dollar. I will drop the deed request permanently. We start clean. Just withdraw the fraud report and do not file on the quit claim. Think about what this does to Dad. His name is on that loan. I have thought about that. Dad thought about it when he signed the application. Teagan, please. The performance fell away. What was underneath was smaller and real in a way that did not help him. I lost 2 major accounts last quarter. I have been upside down $3,000 a month since the fall. The card was the only float I had. I am not a bad person. I just ran out of room. You did not run out of room. You ran out of other people's names to put on your debt. You used mine. You used Mom's property. And when I said no at dinner, you put my laptop in the water, and Dad said mistakes happen. Barrett's hand found the back of the desk chair and gripped it. His knees bent slightly, not sitting, just losing the architecture that was holding him upright. His breathing came through his mouth now, shallow and too fast for the room. I almost said something softer. The way Barrett's hand was shaking on the chair back reminded me of the way Catherine's hand shook when she signed the trust. But Catherine's hand shook because she was dying. Barrett's was shaking because he had been caught. The 2 kinds of tremor look the same. They are not. She signed the trust in her oncologist's waiting room, I said. She chose my name. You were not in the building, Barrett. Neil closed his eyes. Barrett sank into the chair. His elbows landed on his knees. His forehead dropped into both palms. The legal notice slipped from his hand and fanned across the carpet in 3 white pages, each one carrying a consequence he had not imagined when he held a MacBook over 4 inches of water 12 hours ago. The travel card is closed, I said. The deed stays in my name. The trust stays as Mom wrote it. There is no path back to what either of you had before this trip. The next communication you receive from me will come through Fielding's office. Miles walked to the suite door and held it open. No words. Barrett stood slowly. Neil turned and walked out without looking at me. Barrett followed. The door closed with the soft, magnetic click of a hotel lock engaging. I sat at the desk for a long time. Miles brought a fresh coffee and set it on the table without speaking. He picked up the legal notice pages from the carpet, stacked them, and set them on the nightstand. Then he sat on the edge of the bed and waited. The scanned image of my mother's note was on my phone screen. Cloud backup. 7 sentences in blue ink that Barrett had tried to drown when he dropped the MacBook in 4 inches of hotel water. He thought he was destroying a document. He was destroying a screen. The words were never in that lobby. They were in the cloud, in Fielding's office, in Della's kitchen drawer where the original folder has sat since the week after the funeral. They were in every place Barrett had not thought to look, because he has never understood that the things that matter are the things you cannot hold over water and let go. "Are you okay?" Miles asked. "Not yet," I said, "but I will be." We started packing at 10. At 11:30 that morning, Miles and I checked out of the Palmetto Grand. We walked through the lobby with our bags. Barrett was at the front desk. His room had been booked on the family travel card, and the card was closed. The desk clerk, a woman in a burgundy blazer with a name tag that read Shonda, was explaining politely that the card on file had been declined. Barrett reached into his wallet and slid a Visa through the reader. Declined. He tried a second card. Declined. His bank accounts had been flagged overnight after the fraud notification triggered a cross-institution review. He held a third card between his fingers for a moment before sliding it across the counter. The reader beeped once and printed a short receipt. Declined. 2 guests waiting in line shifted their bags. A family with young children stepped around him to the second register. A bellhop standing by the luggage cart studied the carpet. Barrett's hand was still on the counter. 3 declined cards fanned beside the receipt printer like a losing hand. Miles and I walked past the desk toward the revolving door. Barrett looked up. His eyes followed us across the lobby. I did not slow down. Miles did not look over. The door pushed us out into the Charleston morning and the heat closed around us. We loaded the car and drove south toward Beaufort. Neither of us spoke for the first 20 minutes. If this story mattered to you, subscribe to Karma Unfolded. Here is what followed. Pinnacle National called the $210,000 loan within 3 weeks. The bank's fraud department discovered the collateral property was held in an irrevocable trust with no co-owner and no authorization for its pledge. Barrett received a call from a loan officer named Devereaux, who asked him to explain the ownership discrepancy. Barrett could not explain it because there was no explanation that did not involve the words forgery and unauthorized. His remaining accounts stayed frozen pending review. Neil received a separate certified demand letter at his home address. He is personally liable for the full loan balance as co-signer. The pension and savings that Catherine helped him build across 30 years of teaching. The accounts she managed while Barrett was at soccer practice and I was doing homework are now subject to collection. The retirement she planned for him while she was healthy is the money the bank is now entitled to take. Barrett's pharmaceutical company was notified by Pinnacle about the address discrepancy on the loan application because Barrett had listed his corporate email on the form. His HR department opened an internal audit of his expense reporting and found $14,000 in personal charges routed through his company travel card across the same 18-month period. The same pattern he applied to my card, he had applied to his employers. Restaurant charges in sales territories on non-client days. A hotel upgrade in Dallas that was not on his approved itinerary. Conference registration fees for a conference he did not attend. He was placed on administrative leave pending investigation. His regional manager called him on a Tuesday morning and told him to return his company laptop, his access badge, and his client contact list. His office was cleared by building services that afternoon. The sales award plaque stayed on the wall. His nameplate came off the desk and went into a cardboard box that no one picked up for 2 weeks. The county Dawes office accepted the forgery referral on the quitclaim deed. Barrett received a letter requesting a formal interview. He hired a criminal defense attorney named Corwin. The retainer was $6,000, funded by a cash advance from the one credit line that had not yet been frozen. Corwin told Barrett not to contact me or Della or anyone associated with the property. Barrett has not called since. In September, Neil drove 3 hours south to Beaufort. He parked in the driveway of 14 Osprey Lane. The key was in his hand, the same brass key Catherine gave him when the house was new to her, attached to a keychain with a small seashell charm from a gift shop on Bay Street. She had given him the key on a Saturday morning and said, "This is yours as long as I am alive." She did not say after. He walked to the front door, slid the key into the lock. It did not turn. I had changed the locks in July, the day after we returned from Charleston. I did not call him to tell him. I did not need to. The lock told him everything the phone call would have said, just without the words. He walked back to his car. He sat in the driver's seat with the key in his open palm for 20 minutes. Through the windshield, he could see the front porch where Catherine used to sit in the late afternoon light, reading paperback mysteries with a glass of sweet tea balanced on the railing. The rocking chair was still there. The tea was not. He did not call me. He did not call Della. He did not get out of the car again. He started the engine, backed out of the driveway, and drove 3 hours north on Route 17 without stopping for gas or coffee or anything at all. I am on the back deck of the beach house. It is a Thursday evening in October, and the sky over the water is doing the thing it does here at this hour, turning the color of a bruise that is almost healed. The replacement MacBook is open on the patio table. AppleCare covered it. Different case, new keyboard, same cloud account. The screen shows the scanned image of my mother's handwriting. Blue ink. My name at the top. Della's car is in the driveway. She is inside setting the kitchen table for 2. We are having dinner on the deck if the wind stays warm. The waves sound the way they have always sounded here. The same rhythm as when I was 12, and this house belonged to my grandmother, and my mother brought us every June, and I sat on this same deck with a library book and a glass of lemonade and did not want to be anywhere else. My phone buzzes on the table next to the MacBook. Miles, not Barrett, not Neil. I pick up.